Well, Adelaide is next on Footy on 9 season previews, joined again by Matthew Lloyd. Lloydie, some ins for the Crows, but more about the outs for them. They've really had a bit of a reset in terms of their personnel, haven't they?
Yeah, it's like a new footy club, new coach in Matthew Nicks, and then obviously the change in personnel. They were an unhappy group. They tried to deny it for a long period of time, but the results showed that the camp was a disaster. They didn't handle the loss of that grand final a couple of years ago. And so it's a real reset, and they are a very young football club. I look at Adelaide as a powerful club, but I think this year we're going to see quite a young group, and they're trying to find their way again in a rebuild, in a sense, for a couple of years' time.
Well, in terms of the youngsters they brought in, Fisher McCasey, you know a bit about him, and also plenty of other, I guess, relatively high draft picks.
I think the biggest loss out of all the players that the Adelaide Crows lost was Alex Keith. He's one they didn't want to lose. Disappointing. He's only just found his feet. It's been a long process to get to this point, and at the ripe age, 27, 28, in the prime of his career, he's up and left. So I think that their first choice in Fisher McCasey, he's pretty much the replacement for obviously Alex Keith. So I think it's a good replacement. I know he's only young, but he's got the next 12 years where he'll play. And I expect him to play in round one at half-back, centre-half-back.
You mentioned some of the experience they've lost. Alex Keith, one of them. I guess guys that have been really solid AFL footballers for a long period of time, but perhaps at the back end of their careers, your Betts and your Sam Jacobs and these guys. Do you think they made the right call moving those guys on now?
Yeah, I think so. I think Riley O'Brien needs to play every week and doesn't need Sam Jacobs over his shoulder putting that pressure on. And sometimes you feel obliged to play a player like Sam Jacobs. But I think Riley O'Brien's the future. Eddie Betts, I think he was really waning at the Adelaide Crows. So I think it's probably a good move. As harsh as it is to see Eddie Betts finish up at another club, I think that they made the right calls at the end of the year.
They had a lot of guys who underperformed last year, and some of those guys were moved on. Your Josh Jenkins. It puts a lot more pressure on Taylor Walker again now, doesn't it? And he was one who copped a bit of flack last year.
Yeah, there's a couple of forwards at the Adelaide Crows, one at the end of his career in Taylor Walker, and then one younger, Darcy Fogarty. Fogarty's only played 12 games, but I think he's been unfit for a lot of his career. He's carried a bit of excess weight that he needs to, and we all say, where is he? I regard him as probably the best kick I've ever seen when he gets the footy. But if you don't get enough of the ball, well, really don't get rewards for it. So, I hope he's had a big pre-season. Tex Walker, without the captaincy, I think it should help him, but he's got to stand stronger and be more consistent. So, Josh Jenkins has often been the whipping boy for the Adelaide Crows, but there's pressure now on Walker and Fogarty to stand tall for the Crows.
A lot of question marks about their midfield last year. Bryce Gibbs was in and out of the side. The Crouch brothers got a lot of the footy, but their disposal was questioned. They're also questioned about being a bit one-paced in there as well. So it seems like that's where their biggest issue lies, perhaps.
Yeah, it was interesting over the off-season seeing Wayne Malera get a 5-year deal, and that surprised me, but he's the only one with Brodie Smith that's got any flair about them. So I regard Brodie Smith as nearly the Crows' best player because of what he brings to Adelaide. As good as Sloan and the Crouch boys are, Brodie Smith's the one you've got to stop. Those guys, as you said, don't hurt you enough. So they need more midfield goals if there to be any chance of playing finals this year.
You touched on Darcy Fogarty. They've had, I guess, some higher draft picks over the years. We haven't seen a lot of young talent come through outside of perhaps Malera. Do you think now's a chance for them to really bring that through?
Yeah, I think Chase Jones is the one that expect to play pretty early on that hasn't had the opportunities that he deserves. And as I said, Fisher McCasey will play nice and early, a lot of Malera. So, it's what Nicks will do. As I said, I'm not expecting too much from the Crows because this is going to be a pretty young side that comes out and plays this year.
Don Pike obviously moved on. You touched on the camp and how disastrous that was and how, I guess, quick that fall from grace was after the grand final. Matthew Nicks, how's he going to go, and what's the first thing he does as coach?
Yeah, as I said, I'll make a few calls in regards to this, and he's been all about building on their defence at this point in time. So they're focused on that initially, and then from there he'll build on their attack. So he's pretty much starting from scratch. So it's going to take a lot of time for Nicks to really make his stamp on things. They might lose some games easy early in the season, but as we saw with the GWS Giants, pretty brutal footy team. So they'll be pretty tough, I would have thought. But it's just, can they kick enough of a score to really win enough games? I don't think they will this season.
Now, for your pre-season predictions, the pressure is on who the most, do you think, the Adelaide?
Actually, I've got Fogarty. I know he's a young man, but I'm putting it on Darcy Fogarty. So 12 games, been in the system long enough. Cannot wait to see in the pre-season comp and through round 1 and 2, has he streamlined his body? I saw a young Charlie Curnow as an academy player, and he was sort of, had a lot of puppy fat, and within the space of 6 months he was ripped, he was cut, and he's been a star at AFL level. I want to see if Fogarty's got that in him in 2020.
Plenty of players who could improve at Adelaide. Who's going to be the biggest improver?
I love Tom Doedee. So I know he's been crippled by injury and he's sort of a forgotten man, but he's been voted into the leadership group at the Adelaide Crows, which shows the esteem they hold him in, and I expect him to, we know what late lever was for Adelaide. Well, Tom Doedee is just as good in that regard, so I hope that he can have a full season in defence for the Adelaide Crows.
Well, should he get a full season and that they remain relatively injury-free, where do you think they're at?
I'm going to put them down for 12th, so not big expectations. This is a baby group that's going to play with a sprinkling of senior players, so I think that they'll fall away a little. They'll start slowly, go right through the middle, but fall away as the season unfolds.
Lloydie, thanks again.
Thanks, Danton.
And more on that, wideworldofsports.com.au or 9 Now for Footy on 9's season previews.